friends were just having fun by mocking him, but then he stood up and did this. I'm going to call myself Jane for the sake of this story, because honestly, I'm still trying to process everything that's happened, and I don't want my real name out there just yet. I've been working as a wind turbine engineer for about 5 years now. Yeah, it's a mouthful, and no, I don't just stand around in a hard hat all day, although that is part of the job. I actually really love what I do. There's something about harnessing the power of the wind to create energy that just feels right to me. Plus, it pays the bills and then some. I mean, have you seen the salaries for engineers in the renewable energy sector? It's not bad for a girl who used to tinker with gadgets in her dad's garage. I started out in the field after college, interning with a company that installed turbines all over the country. I worked my way up from there, and now I'm one of the lead engineers on a team that designs and installs turbines for a major energy company. It's a good job, but it's not without its stresses. Long hours, tight deadlines, and the occasional 3 a.m. wake-up call because a turbine is malfunctioning in the middle of nowhere. But hey, it's worth it to know I'm contributing to a cleaner, greener future. I met Elias through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue on a warm summer evening. I'm also going to be using a fake name to hide his identity. I was immediately drawn to his kind eyes and easy smile. We started talking, and I was surprised by how much we had in common. As we talked, I found myself comfortable around him. He was easy to talk to, and he listened in a way that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. I was smitten, but I didn't want to admit it to myself. We exchanged numbers, and he asked me out on a proper date a few days later. Our first date was a bit of a mess, but we still had a great time, and from there, things just clicked. We spent countless nights exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and laughing together. He was someone I cared for so much because he was there when I needed him, or didn't. After a while, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. He proposed to me on a beautiful hike, and I said yes without hesitation. We were both so happy, and our friends and family were thrilled for us. Elias was the most trusting and believing person I'd ever met. He always saw the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it. He'd do anything for me, and I mean anything. He'd drop everything to help me, to make me happy. At first it was sweet. He'd surprise me with my favorite coffee in the morning, or show up at my work with a bouquet of flowers. But over time it started to feel suffocating. He'd do everything for me without even asking. He'd pay my bills, cook my meals, even pick out my clothes. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it was like he thought I couldn't take care of myself. And maybe, in a way, he was right. I'd grown so used to him doing everything that I'd forgotten how to do things on my own. And then there was the way he'd talk about me. He'd go on and on about how amazing I was, how smart and talented and beautiful. It was like he thought I was some kind of goddess or something. At first it was flattering, but after a while it started to feel creepy, like he was putting me on a pedestal or something and I didn't know how to get down. I know I should have said something, should have told him to back off a bit, but I didn't. I just let it all happen, because it was easier that way. We started making wedding plans, and everything seemed perfect, but looking back, I guess I was ignoring some signs, some warning bells that I didn't want to hear. And then, at the pre-wedding party, everything changed. One moment, we were all laughing and having a great time. The next, my world was turned upside down. The pre-wedding party was in full swing, and we were all having a great time. Elias was beaming with happiness, and I was pretending to be. My friends and I had had a few too many drinks, and we started teasing Elias about how trusting he was. We'd make jokes about how I might be taking advantage of him, and he'd just laugh it off. But the jokes kept going, and they started to get a bit mean-spirited. We were all having a good time at his expense, and I didn't do anything to stop it. Daniel, Elias's best friend, seemed to be the ringleader of the whole thing. He'd make these snide comments about how Elias was so whipped, and how I must be doing whatever I wanted behind his back. Elias would just shake his head and smile, but I could see the doubt starting to creep into his eyes. And I didn't stop it. I didn't tell my friends to back off, or to leave him alone. Looking back, I realized how cruel we were being, and it was all leading up to the moment when he would no longer take it. After a while, Elias had had enough. He got up, saying something about needing to take care of an important matter, and stormed off. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just assumed he was going to go cool off or something. Maybe make a phone call or step outside for some fresh air. But as soon as he was gone, Daniel caught my eye and signaled for me to meet him outside. He raised an eyebrow and tilted his head, and I knew exactly what he was asking. I got up, trying to act nonchalant, and followed him out to the garden. It was quiet and dark out there, the only sound being the distant music from the party. Daniel took my hand and pulled me behind a row of bushes where we couldn't be seen. And then he kissed me. It was passionate and intense, and I felt like I was melting into his arms. He was a good kisser, and I couldn't help but respond. We stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other's arms. I knew it was wrong, but at that moment I didn't care. I was caught up in the excitement of it all, the thrill of doing something forbidden. It was like a rush, a high, and I just couldn't get enough. I know you are surprised that I was having an affair with my boyfriend's best buddy. I had met Daniel through Elias, actually. They were friends from college, and Daniel would often come over to our place for dinner or to watch games. At first, I thought he was just another one of Elias's friends. Nice enough, but not particularly interesting. But as I got to know him better, I realized there was more to Daniel than met the eye. He was charming and witty, with a quick sense of humor and a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. He'd ask me questions about myself, listen attentively to my responses, and remember tiny details that I'd mentioned in passing. I remember one time we were all out at a bar, and Daniel started telling this hilarious story about something that had happened to him at work. I was laughing so hard I had tears in my eyes, and Elias was grinning from ear to ear. After that, I started to look forward to Daniel's visits. He'd come over and we'd talk for hours, about everything and nothing. Elias would sometimes join in, but mostly he'd just sit back and let us chat. I found myself feeling drawn to Daniel's energy, his enthusiasm, and his passion for life. He had this spark in his eye that I couldn't quite resist, and yet I never thought of him as anything more than a friend, at least not until a few months ago. Looking back, I realized that I was blind to the signs. Daniel would touch my arm when we talked, or brush his hand against mine. He'd make these flirtatious comments that I'd brush off as jokes, but deep down, I knew. I knew that he was interested in me, and I was interested in him too. That's when our affair started. It was a gradual thing, a slippery slope that I couldn't seem to climb back up from. We'd meet for coffee, just the two of us, and talk about our lives. Then we'd meet for drinks, and the conversations would get a little deeper, a little more personal. We'd find excuses to touch each other, to brush our hands together, to linger a little too long in each other's eyes. It was exhilarating, but also terrifying. I knew I was risking everything, my relationship with Elias, my friendships, my reputation. But I couldn't help myself. I was addicted to the thrill of it all, the excitement of being with someone new. We'd steal glances at each other during social gatherings, our hearts racing with excitement and guilt. We'd send each other secret messages, our fingers flying across the keyboard as we tried to express the emotions we couldn't verbalize. Back to where I was earlier, I'm still trying to process what happened that night. Daniel and I kissed, and Elias saw us. He stood there looking at us. Maybe he had been standing there before we reached there. It was a detail I couldn't assert. He looked so hurt and betrayed, and then he just took off without saying a word. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, like all the air had been sucked out of me. I knew I'd made a huge mistake, but I didn't know how to fix it. Daniel tried to talk to me, but I just pushed him away. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to face the consequences of my actions. I just wanted to go back in time and undo everything. But I couldn't. All I could do was stand there, frozen, as Elias disappeared into the crowd. I knew I should have gone after him, tried to explain, apologized, but my feet felt heavy, like lead. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was watch as he walked away. I couldn't bring myself to go home for days. I didn't know how to face Elias, how to explain what had happened, how to apologize for my betrayal. So I stayed away, hiding out in a friend's apartment, feeling miserable and ashamed, But I couldn't stop texting him. I sent him message after message, apologizing, explaining, begging for forgiveness. I knew it wasn't enough, but I didn't know what else to do. I was desperate to make things right. The messages were all the same. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. But I couldn't stop sending them. I needed him to know how I felt, how much I regretted what had happened. Finally, after days of hiding out, I worked up the courage to go to Elias's home. I was nervous, scared, and unsure of what to expect. But I knew I had to face him, to apologize in person, to try and make things right. When I got there, he opened the door, but he didn't smile, didn't hug me, didn't even kiss me. He just stood there, his eyes cold, his expression hard. I tried to hug him, to hold him, but he just stood stiffly, his arms at his sides. I begged him to forgive me, to listen to me, to talk to me, but he just kept pressing his phone, scrolling through screens, his eyes fixed on the device in his hand. I felt like I was talking to a stranger, like the man I loved had been replaced by a cold, hard shell of a person. I tried to touch him, to hold his hand, but he pulled away. I tried to kiss him, to show him my love, but he turned his head. It was like he was repelled by me, like I was toxic, poisonous. It was surprising I had never seen him like this before. I didn't know how to reach him, how to get through to him. I remember when we used to have small fights months back. Even when I was at fault, he was always the one doing the begging while I reeled in from the pleasure of having him wrapped around my fingers. It had always been him being ignored by me, but this time it was different. One of the reasons I had to apologize was not because I cared if he would forgive me. I just wanted the wedding to go through. It was an embarrassment to suddenly call off the wedding when my parents are already going all out inviting guests. I wouldn't want to crash it all away. I begged him to tell me what was wrong, to tell me how to fix it, but he just shook his head, his eyes still fixed on his phone. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. So I decided to reach out to our friend Pete, hoping he could talk some sense into Elias. I told Pete everything, about the kiss, about Elias's silence, about my desperation to make things right. Pete listened attentively, his expression growing more and more uncomfortable. I could tell he was disgusted by what I'd done, but he agreed to talk to Elias anyway. Pete headed to Elias's place, and I waited anxiously for him to return. I hoped against hope that Elias would finally listen to me, that he would forgive me, and we could start working on our relationship again. But when Pete came back, his expression was grim. He told me that Elias was still hurting, that he felt betrayed and didn't know if he could ever trust me again. Pete said that Elias needed time and space to figure out if he even wanted to be in a relationship with me anymore. Pete's words kept echoing in my mind. Elias didn't know if he could ever trust me again. I realized that I'd broken the one thing that was essential to our relationship, trust. I didn't know how to repair it, how to make things go back to the way they were before. All I could do was wait and hope that Elias would eventually forgive me and give me another chance. I decided to meet up with Daniel, hoping he would try to clear the air and maybe even find a way to fix things with Elias. But as soon as I saw Daniel, I knew I'd made a mistake. He seemed smug and self-satisfied, and I could tell he was enjoying the drama he'd caused. He leaned back in his chair, and then he had this annoying grin spread on his face. I tried to persuade him to talk to Elias, to apologize for his part in our affair, and maybe even help me repair my relationship. But Daniel refused. His expression showed me that he wasn't even going to try to take any steps. He seemed to take pleasure in my misery, and I realized that he'd never been interested in helping me or Elias, only in satisfying his own desires. He wasn't even bothered that he was losing his close friend. Maybe I had gotten involved with the wrong person then, and I'm beginning to regret it. As we talked, I discovered a shocking truth. Daniel had initially wanted Elias to find out about our affair, and had deliberately tried to hurt him and destroy our relationship. Like how? None of us did him bad, and our affair was only because I liked him. I didn't realize what he was gaining from the tantrum he had initially caused. What if he had even purposely taken me to where Elias would catch us? Then he must have been so sick in the head to do that. I felt a wave of revulsion, realizing that I'd been blind to Daniel's true nature. He was manipulative and toxic, and I'd fallen for his charms like a fool. Oh yes, I felt like the biggest fool on earth. I had to think back to all the times Daniel had told me that he cared about me, that he wanted to help me. It had all been a lie, a clever ruse to get me into bed, and now he was refusing to take responsibility for his actions, refusing to even apologize for the pain he'd caused. I left the meeting feeling defeated and demoralized. I knew I had to end things with Daniel, but I also knew that I had a long way to go to repair the damage I'd done to my relationship with Elias, and I wasn't even sure if it was possible. Elias had every right to be angry, to never want to speak to me again, and I couldn't blame him. I wouldn't even want to get back together with him. Pete had been the only person who knew my true situation throughout this entire ordeal. He had been someone I could depend on, and he had been offering me constant advice and support. Pete had encouraged me to reach out to Elias and try to make things right. He had also advised me to be honest with myself and confront my own flaws and weaknesses. Pete's advice had been invaluable, and I relied on him heavily during this difficult time. He was my best friend during my plight and had been a steady source of support. I knew that no matter what happened with Elias, Pete would be there for me. Pete, being the supportive friend that he was, suggested that Elias and I attend couples therapy together. He thought it would be a good idea for us to work through our issues with a professional. At first I was hesitant, but Pete convinced me that it was worth a try. However, Elias was resistant to the idea. He didn't want to talk about his feelings or work on our relationship, but Pete was persistent. He sat down with Elias and had a heart-to-heart talk with him, explaining how therapy could benefit us both. Eventually, Pete's persistence paid off, and Elias agreed to attend therapy with me. Pete even offered to drive us to our first session, making sure we both showed up. The therapist Pete had recommended specialized in relationships and infidelity, making her the perfect fit for our situation. With Pete's support, we began the difficult process of working through our issues and rebuilding our relationship. We met the therapist in her cozy office. She seemed to be a lover of art and nature because she was surrounded by calming plants and soothing artwork. She was warm and welcoming, with a kind smile that put us both at ease. Pete had briefed her on our situation, so she knew what to expect. As we began our session, Elias spoke out his mind, sharing his feelings and concerns. He revealed that his past relationship had left him scarred, and he'd become guarded as a result. He'd been drawn to me because of my carefree nature, but my infidelity had triggered all his past insecurities. Elias explained that he'd felt like he was walking on eggshells around me, never knowing when I'd hurt him again. He'd tried to be understanding and patient, but it had taken a toll on him. He felt like he'd been babying me, trying to help me work through my issues while neglecting his own. He shared how he'd felt suffocated by my need for constant reassurance, how he'd felt like he was losing himself in the process of trying to fix me. He expressed his frustration and hurt, his feelings of betrayal and anger. The doctor listened attentively, nodding along as Elias spoke. She asked questions, clarifying his feelings and concerns. I listened, and to be all sincere, tears wanted to force themselves out because I realized how much I had hurt him. For the first time, I saw things from his perspective. I understood that his behavior hadn't been about controlling me, but about protecting himself from getting hurt again. I saw how my actions had affected him, how I'd broken his trust and shaken his confidence. She helped us both see that our actions were rooted in our past experiences, and that we needed to work together to heal and move forward. As the therapy session came to a close, Elias dropped a bombshell. He looked at me. I didn't know what was going on through his, but it was reflecting on his face. He said that he couldn't continue with the wedding plans. He felt that our relationship was too broken, too damaged, and me having an affair with someone he regarded as his best friend was what he would never forgive. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut again. I had been so focused on saving our relationship, on making things right, that I hadn't even considered the possibility that Elias might not want to go through with the wedding. I thought about all the plans we'd made, all the dreams we'd shared, and I felt like they were all slipping away. The doctor encouraged us to take a break and think about what we really wanted. She reminded us that our relationship was complex and that we needed to prioritize our own healing and growth before we could move forward together. As we left the therapist's office, I fell on my knees and cried to him. I begged him, but he wouldn't even look me in the face twice. Where would I start from? It was Pete that came to pull me up, and he wouldn't even talk to Pete, who was trying to stop him. The days that followed were dark and difficult. I sank into a deep depression, struggling to come to terms with the fact that our wedding was off. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but everything felt empty and meaningless. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of sadness that had settled in my heart. I felt like I was drowning in my own despair, and I didn't know how to keep my head clear and think straight. I knew I had to break the news to my parents, but I was dreading it. They'd been so excited about the wedding, so invested in our happiness. They'd already started making plans, already started envisioning their daughter in a white dress, walking down the aisle towards the man of her dreams. I felt like I was letting them down, like I was failing them in some way. I remember sitting in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories of my youth, and trying to find the words to tell my mom that the wedding was off. She'd always been my rock, my confidant, and I knew she'd be devastated. I could see the excitement in her eyes, the anticipation of the big day, and I knew I had to extinguish it. I took a deep breath and told her everything. About Elias's decision, about our therapy sessions, about my own feelings of failure and despair. I told her about the pain and the heartache, about the sleepless nights and the endless tears. I told her about everything, not bothering to hide my affair. She listened. She didn't want to chastise me. I know, because her face etched with concern and sadness. And then she wrapped me in a warm hug. She said that we'll get through this together. She added that. I'm strong and we'll go through that phase and come out stronger. But I couldn't shake off this insane feeling of failure, of disappointment. I felt like I'd let everyone down, including myself. I had to take a break from work, you know? I just couldn't face the office or my colleagues. It was like, how could I pretend everything was fine when it wasn't? I couldn't put on a happy face and make small talk when my heart was aching, and even when I tried to go back to work, I just couldn't focus. My mind kept wandering back to Elias and what could have been. I'd stare at my computer screen, but nothing would register. It was like my brain was a million miles away. Luckily, my boss was super understanding. She told me to take all the time I needed, to prioritize my own well-being. So I started small. I took short walks around the block, trying to clear my head. I tried yoga and meditation to calm my mind. I read books and listened to music. I was already feeling like I'd hit rock bottom, but then I found out that all my friends were talking about me behind my back. It was like another punch to the gut. I have been punched to the gut so many times in this story. It has become annoying because, to be honest, I couldn't believe they'd do that to me. I soon realized that Pete had been running his mouth, telling everyone about my situation with Elias. I felt so betrayed. I thought Pete was my friend, my go-to guy for advice and support. But I guess I was wrong. And as I started to notice the way my friends were treating me, I knew something was up. They'd give me these condescending looks or make snide comments, and I just knew they were all talking about me. It was like they were all in on some big secret, and I was the last one to know. I felt so hurt, so angry. I don't even know who to trust anymore. I started to wonder if anyone was actually my friend, or if they were all just waiting for me to slip up so they could gossip about me some more. When I confronted Pete about it, he just brushed it off like it was no big deal. He said he was trying to help, but I knew that was just a load of BS. Pete's always been a bit of a gossip, and now he'd dragged me into it. I was livid. I didn't know how to process it all. I just felt so alone, like I couldn't trust anyone. I've been consumed by regret lately. I keep thinking about Elias and how I messed up. I took him for granted, assuming he'd always be there to pick up the pieces. I wish I could turn back time, make things right between us. I want to tell him how sorry I am, how much I regret losing him. I miss him so much it physically hurts. I miss his smile, his laugh, his kind heart. I remember the way he'd make me laugh, the way he'd hold me in his arms. I miss the way he'd look at me, with so much love and adoration in his eyes. It's like I've lost a part of myself. I'm haunted by what-ifs. What if I'd been honest with him from the start? What if I'd worked harder to make our relationship stronger? What if I'd appreciated him more? I think about all the moments we shared, all the memories we made. I think about the way he'd always know how to make me feel better, the way he'd always be there for me. Now he's gone, and I'm left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. I know I'll never find another love like Elias's. I'm consumed by sorrow, regret, and longing. I wish I could go back, make things right. But life doesn't work that way. All I can do is move forward, alone, with the knowledge of what I've lost. I hope someday I'll be able to forgive myself, to move on from this heartache. But for now, I'm stuck in this sea of regret, wondering what could have been if only I'd been honest, if only I'd been true. Update. I was still reeling from the aftermath of my breakup with Elias when things took a turn for the worse. His mother, who I had always gotten along with, came to visit my mother. I thought it was a nice gesture, but little did I know it was a visit that would lead to a heated argument. As soon as Elias's mother arrived, I could sense the tension in the air. She was furious, and my mother, sensing her anger, tried to calm her down, but Elias's mother was having none of it. "You raised a harlot?" She spat at my mother, her voice dripping with venom. "Your daughter is a disgrace, and she's broken my son's heart into 1,000,000 pieces." I was shocked, hurt, and angry all at once. I had never seen Elias's mother like this before. She had always been kind and warm towards me, but now she seemed like a different person. My mother, taken aback by her words, tried to defend me, but Elias's mother wouldn't let up. The argument escalated, with both women raising their voices and saying things they couldn't take back. I felt like I was in a nightmare, unable to wake up. I didn't know what to do, how to stop the fight. I had always liked Elias's mother, respected her, and now I felt like I was losing her too. The argument ended with Elias's mother storming out of our house, leaving me feeling devastated, hurt, and lost. I didn't know how to repair the damage, how to make things right again. Just before I left, Elias's mom delivered another devastating blow. She told me that Elias had decided to move away, to start fresh in a new place. My friends, my gut was probably bleeding now, because this was another punch in the gut, and it knocked my breath out of me. The thought of Elias leaving, of him being gone for good, was almost too much to bear. I tried to process this new information. It was difficult to wrap my head around the fact that I had lost him so completely. He couldn't even stand to be in the same city as me, couldn't bear the thought of running into me again. The pain and guilt I felt were suffocating me. I still planned on asking for his forgiveness, even if we were no longer together, just to feel at peace. By now, I lost my whole chance. If that wasn't enough, I also recently got a text from Daniel. Yes, that Daniel. He had the audacity to tell me that he missed me. I couldn't believe it. Was he kidding me? Did he really think I would fall for his games again? I felt a wave of anger and disgust wash over me. How dare he try to crawl back into my life after everything he had done? Did he think I was just going to forget about the pain he had caused me? I thought about responding, about telling him exactly what I thought of him. But then I realized, why bother? He wasn't worth my time, my energy, my emotions. I didn't even bother responding. Instead, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I blocked him. On every platform, every social media site, every messaging app. I erased him from my digital life, just like he had erased himself from my heart. It was liberating, really. I felt like I was finally taking back control, finally closing the door on a chapter of my life that I was ready to leave behind. Daniel was gone, and I was moving on. Or at least I was trying to. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. But I was determined to leave the past in the past and focus on rebuilding my life, my heart, my sense of self. Update. As I close this chapter of my life, I want to take a moment to appreciate each and every one of you who has followed my story. Whether you loved me or hated me, thanked me or cursed me, I see you, I hear you, and I appreciate you. To those who left negative comments, who called me names and questioned my choices, I thank you too. Your words stung, but they also made me stronger. They made me realize that I'm not perfect, that I make mistakes, and that I can always grow. Your criticism forced me to look inward, to confront my flaws, and to work on becoming a better version of myself. And to those who wished me well, who sent me kind words and encouragement. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support means the world to me. It gave me the courage to keep going, even when things seemed impossible. Your kindness reminded me that there's still good in the world, that there are still people who care, and that I'm not alone. As I move forward, I hope you'll join me on this new journey. I hope you'll see the growth, the learning, and the healing that's taking place in my life. I hope you'll find something in my story that resonates with you, something that makes you feel less alone. Maybe you've gone through something similar. Maybe you're struggling right now. Or maybe you're just looking for a reminder that you're not alone. Whatever it is, I hope you'll stay with me. I hope you'll continue to share your thoughts, your feelings, and your experiences. I hope you'll keep pushing me to be my best self, even when it's hard. I'm left with one final thought: regret. Regret for losing Elias, for letting my fears and doubts get the best of me. Regret for not fighting harder for our love, for not being brave enough to take a chance on us. Elias, if you're reading this, I want you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry for hurting you, for letting you go, and for not being the partner you deserved. You were my rock, my soulmate, and my everything. I was lucky to have you in my life, and I'm heartbroken that it didn't work out between us. I remember the way you made me laugh, the way you always knew how to make me feel better when I was down. I remember the way you held my hand, the way you looked at me with so much love in your eyes. I remember the adventures we had, the memories we created, and the dreams we shared. As you move on with your life, I wish you all the happiness in the world. I hope you find someone who loves and appreciates you for who you are, someone who will fight for you and with you. You deserve it, Elias. You deserve all the love and joy that life has to offer. I hope you find someone who will be your partner, your friend, and your confidant. Someone who will stand by your side through thick and thin. Someone who will hold your hand when the road gets rough. You deserve someone who will love you with all their heart. Someone who will cherish and honor you. I'll always cherish the memories we made together, the laughter we shared, and the adventures we had. You'll always have a piece of my heart, and I hope that someday, somehow, our paths will cross again. Thank you again, dear friends. Thank you for being part of my story. Thank you for being my rock, my safe space, and my community. I'm honored to have shared this journey with you, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Hey everyone, I've been quietly following this platform, reading the stories shared by others, and never once did I imagine I'd be here, sharing my own. But life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? So here I am, typing away, feeling the weight of my story in every keystroke. I'm Taylor, and I'm 32 years old. My husband Alex is 33, and we've been married for 5 years. We met back in college in one of those cheesy movie moments that actually happen in real life. We were young, in love, dreaming big and utterly clueless about the roller coaster life had in store for us. These days, I juggle 2 jobs. I work a regular 9-to-5 gig in an office, but my real passion lies in my online baking business. Baking has always been my thing, my way of unwinding after a long day. Turning it into a business felt like turning a hobby into a dream come true. Even though I haven't been able to give it as much attention as I'd like due to my office job, I'm fortunate to have a lot of loyal customers who appreciate the quality of my work and keep coming back. Alex is the breadwinner, and he makes really good money from his office job too, which has left me with a lot of free money to spend. Some might say I could have chosen to be a stay-at-home mom, but that was never my dream. I wanted to contribute, to build something of my own and have my own thing going on, and Alex supported that without question. You see, I'm a bit frivolous when it comes to money. With Alex bringing in 99% of our household income, my salary from my 9-to-5 job, combined with the steady income from my successful online business, leaves me with more disposable income than I know what to do with. So I indulge in the occasional girls' trip or splurge on things that catch my eye. For a while, life was good. Our relationship was solid, our sex life was great, and we were happy. But then, I messed up. Big time. It was one of those drunken nights with friends, and I made a mistake that I can't take back. The guilt ate away at me until I couldn't keep it in anymore. It gnawed at my conscience until I could no longer bear it. So a few days later, I told Alex everything, expecting the worst. Surprisingly, he was understanding. Disappointed, sure, but he forgave me. Or so I thought. Turns out it was just a revenge plan to leave me as wrecked as he could. So I know you're probably wondering if things were so good between me and my husband. Why would I make such a mistake? It's because it was exactly that, a mistake. Let me give you some backstory on how it all happened. At my regular 9-to-5 job, a new guy came in. His name was Marco. They picked me as the one to train Marco. I didn't really care much. I accepted, I couldn't say no. It wasn't like it was a big deal, just training. But looking back, if I could go back in time, I would have never agreed to train him. He started flirting with me. At first, I just ignored it. But after a point, I told him I was going to report him to HR if he did not stop. That made him stop. But then, after I was done with his training, which didn't take long, he started being overly nice to me. Worse still was that he worked in my department, so he would bring me lunch if he saw that I didn't go to lunch. He would bring me drinks. He would help me voluntarily. He would compliment my clothes and my dresses. He would do all this stuff. At first, it was very annoying, but as time went on, it started to become nice. He complimented me, and I started putting effort into my clothes. It was nice to feel appreciated. Of course, I didn't want to cheat on my husband. I didn't mean to. I think I just liked the attention Marco was giving me. So yeah, I thought he was being pretty harmless. I mean, he wasn't really hurting anybody or me by being nice, so I just kind of ignored him, In hindsight, I know I should have just reported him to HR. I should have told my husband. I should have avoided him. Now, normally, I'm not much of a social person. My husband is the social butterfly out of both of us. I've always struggled with low self-esteem while growing up, being overly dependent on friends. I didn't really have a lot of friends, unlike my husband, so I would usually just go home after work. But that day, I honestly did not know what came into my head. It had been about a month or two since Marco had started working with us. A coworker suggested that we hit the pub, and usually, like I said before, I'll say no. But this time I decided, why not? I mean, screw it. Anyways, I knew my husband wasn't going to be home yet, as he told me that he was going to be working late that day. So I decided, instead of going home and being lonely and just watching movies and stuff like that, why not just head out and hit the pub or bar with my friends? So we headed out to the pub. Marco came along. I think it was about 7 to 8 of us. We had fun. I think we had so much fun because we went to a pub, we went for some karaoke, we ate some street food, and then we went back to another pub. At this point, we were drinking a lot. We had been drinking so much that I think everybody just kind of blacked out. By blackout, I guess I don't mean blackout literally. I kind of mean like everybody just started doing crazy stuff. We were really drunk at this point, throw up drunk, like really, really, really drunk. In a way, all I remember after heading out to the other bar because it was very rare for all of us as coworkers to go out. So we decided that, hey, why not, get a little wild tonight, because it's really rare once in a while that we all go out together and, have fun stuff like this. So we decided to go all out without craziness. That was a very bad idea because the next morning I woke up in an unrecognizable room. Of course, like any other human being, my first thought process was to, panic. I do not recognize this room. Where am I? I panicked, and I started panicking even more when I noticed that I wasn't wearing any clothes and Marco was right next to me on the bed. Yes, Marco, I almost screamed. What kind of mistake had I made? This is someone I should have avoided from the start. I didn't even know who to blame, what to blame. I went through all the stages of grief, shame, guilt. Everything washed down on me. I didn't even know what I was going to tell my husband. I was pretty sure that he must have called me a lot of times because I didn't tell him I was going to stay the night. I had a huge banging headache. I was hungover really bad. But I was more desperate to see how many missed calls my husband had given me, because the number of missed calls he had given me detected the kind of urgency he was going through. So I started searching around for my bag. Thankfully, it wasn't too far from the bed. I checked my bag, my credit card, everything was still inside. I was even thankful that my things hadn't gotten stolen last night. I honestly wouldn't have even known if someone had dipped their hand in my purse or even taken my bag because I was that drunk. It was kind of obvious at this point that I was at Marco's house, which now that I think of it makes me wonder how exactly Marco was able to locate his house if he was as drunk as the rest of us were. I checked my phone, and funny enough, I did not have any missed calls from my husband. That was really, really weird. I checked my messages, and there I saw that I had some text messages from him, and as if God himself or some kind of cosmic being was on my side. My husband hadn't come home that night, so he didn't know that night. So he didn't even know that I didn't spend the night at home. I checked the messages, and I saw that he sent me some messages telling me good night, that he was sorry that he wouldn't be able to come home tonight, and that he would just stay in at the office. I was so thankful. I literally almost prayed right there. Because what would I have told my husband? How would I have explained it? That was literally everything going through my mind. I was so thankful. He thought I was at home, safe and sound. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by guilt and shame. How could I have let this happen? How could I face my husband and tell him what I'd done? Marco was still stupidly sleeping. I knew I had to leave. I gathered my things, dressed quickly, and slipped out of the room. I drove home in a daze. My mind was consumed with thoughts of how to explain myself to my husband, and then on how to beg for his forgiveness, or to not even tell him at all about what had happened. When I got home, I felt so relieved that my husband wasn't there yet. I called in sick at work and spent the rest of the day trying to recover from the hangover. I was really torn about what to do. Part of me wanted to tell my husband everything, but the thought of confessing that I cheated on him was just too much. The other part of me thought I could just keep quiet and pretend like nothing happened. I mean, how would he find out, right? It was a real struggle. I love my husband so much, and I never meant to hurt him. The guilt was eating me up inside, but I just couldn't bring myself to confess. So for the next few days, I kept it all to myself, feeling more and more miserable. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The guilt was eating me alive. One evening, I mustered up the courage to tell Alex the truth about my infidelity. As the truth finally spilled out of me, I could see the shock and sadness in his eyes. It was like I had shattered his world. He needed time to process everything, so he asked me to give him some space. I was terrified of losing him, but I understood. I left him alone, hoping and praying that he would forgive me. Surprisingly, hours has barely passed, and then Alex came to me. His eyes were red and puffy, but he looked at me with such tenderness that I was taken aback. He told me he forgave me. He said he knew it was a mistake, that I was a good person who had made a bad decision. I couldn't believe it. Alex, who had always been so firm about trust and loyalty, was forgiving me for the worst mistake I had ever made. I was overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. I knew I didn't deserve his forgiveness, but I was so thankful to have it. Honestly, I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, we could move past this and rebuild the trust in our relationship that I had definitely broken. I thought we could move past this, that our relationship could heal. But then, things started to change. Alex's forgiveness seemed conditional. He began to use my mistake against me, subtly at first. He would bring it up in arguments, reminding me of what I had done. He would withhold affection, saying he needed time to trust me again. He would shift the blame onto me, saying I was the one who had caused all this pain. I felt like I was going crazy. I knew what I had done was wrong, but Alex's constant reminders made me doubt myself. Maybe I was a bad person. Maybe I didn't deserve his forgiveness. Maybe I deserved to be punished. Alex's gaslighting was subtle but effective. He made me doubt my own reality, my own feelings. He made me feel like I was the one in the wrong, that I was the one who had hurt him. It was a cruel form of manipulation, one that left me feeling isolated and alone. I knew I had made a mistake, but I also knew I deserved forgiveness, real forgiveness, not this twisted version Alex was offering. Days started turning into weeks, and Alex's gaslighting became more pronounced. He would question my memory of events, making me doubt what I knew to be true. He would minimize my feelings, telling me I was overreacting or being too sensitive and that we were fine. I tried to confront him about his behavior, but he would always deflect or deny any wrongdoing. He would accuse me of being paranoid or delusional, furthering my confusion. I felt trapped. I realized that what I needed was some time to chill away from Alex. He was hurt, I was hurt too, and I knew that what I had done was wrong, but we weren't really doing ourselves any good. I loved Alex and I didn't want to lose him, but I honestly thought that we needed some time away from each other. I decided that I would go on a mini vacation. Well, not really a mini vacation, but off to my parents' house. I thought I'd stay there for about a week or two, just to give us time to chill and calm down. When I told Alex about going to my parents, he was surprised and asked me if I was sure. He even asked if I was running away from our marriage, but I assured him I wasn't. He seemed resigned and simply said, "Fine." At work, things were a little awkward, but we had already moved past the entire incident. Marco was no longer as nice as he was, which was a relief. I guess he had gotten what he wanted from me, which was the sex. The rest of my coworkers, I guess, also did really embarrassing things, and we really didn't want to talk about it. So we just ignored it and pretended like that night never happened. I knew I needed to use my saved vacation time from work for this break. I decided that I would work all the way up until Friday, and then ask for my vacations to start on Saturday. Maybe I'd come back the next 2 weeks or something like that. After the Friday, I had already asked for my vacations, and they were fine with it at work because I rarely ever took a day off. I packed a few clothes to last about a week or two. I left a lot of stuff behind, just taking the essentials because I was definitely coming back. I just needed to give us some space to chill, refresh ourselves, and recharge from the drama. When I got to my parents' house, they were really happy to see me. They were a little surprised since I hadn't told them I was coming. That was because with all the ongoing shit, I had genuinely forgot to. They made me food, and for the first time in weeks, I genuinely smiled. They knew something was up but didn't push me to talk about it. The next morning, I planned to fill them in on what had happened, but I woke up to find that my ex-husband, who I now consider my ex, was being petty. He had humiliated me by telling everyone I had cheated. My parents, my siblings, our few friends, everyone. He not only told them, but he also fabricated a story, saying I had been seeing the guy for months, that he was my lover, adding all sorts of crazy stuff. And they believed him. My parents confronted me, angry about the cheating. I explained it was a mistake, a one-night stand because I was drunk. They eventually believed me, but the damage was done. The few friends I had texted, calling me disgusting. Honestly, I had felt a wave of relief when my parents believed me, even if my friends didn't. They were only around when it suited them anyway. My reputation was tarnished, but I couldn't dwell on that. Little did I know, Alex was about to sink even lower. Wanting to distract myself, I decided to log into my Facebook. I expected some messages asking about the cheating scandal from people Alex had told. Little did I know, a worse surprise awaited me. As I tried to log in, I was met with incorrect password, which was odd because I usually save my login details. Attempting to reset my password, I was prompted to enter a verification code sent to my email. However, the email displayed was not mine. It had been changed. At first, I thought it was a hacker, a situation I'm sure most people have dealt with. I decided to check my account using my mom's Facebook since she was my friend on the platform. Logging in, I expected to see changes to my account, perhaps a different profile picture or suspicious activity. To my horror, my latest post was a fabricated confession of cheating on Alex and being in a relationship with Marco for a month. These were all lies. Alex had not only changed my password and email, but he had also crafted a deceitful post, claiming I was confessing as punishment for my infidelity. He even tagged my boss and co-workers, including Marco, despite us not being friends on Facebook. The post had gone viral, and it had attracted numerous comments. Alex is such a petty asshole. I mean, seriously, who does this kind of shit? So after he hacked my Facebook and posted all that crap about me cheating, I got a message from my boss. I was so embarrassed I didn't even know how to respond. Like, what could I possibly say? I was so mad at Alex. I messaged him asking why he would do something like this, and he just laughed it off. Can you believe that? He sent me a laughing emoji and said it was my punishment for cheating. What the hell, right? I realized then that I was dealing with a total revenge-driven psycho. Anyway, long story short, I got fired. My boss didn't want the drama, so they let me go. At least they said they would compensate. I didn't really care about the job, though. I still had my online business, or so I thought. When I checked my online stuff, I was locked out. My blog was gone, my Instagram was messed up, and I was locked out. I checked my Instagram with my mom's phone, and Alex had not only changed my Gmail and my password, thereby logging me out. He had also posted on my Instagram a screen record of the Facebook post he made. He had ruined not only my physical reputation, but my online reputation, especially since I had a sizable following online. It was like he had gone on a rampage. He had erased every trace of my business. I was so confused and pissed. How did he even have the time to do all that? It was insane. And the nightmare continued. After locking me out of all my social media accounts, changing the passwords and emails so I couldn't access them, Alex took it a step further. He started signing me up for all sorts of nonsense. Using my email, he subscribed me to spam emails, promotional texts, and even wrote fake reviews and comments in my name. He enrolled me in countless subscription services, magazines, newsletters, and online platforms that I had zero interest in. He even went as far as entering my information in online contests, surveys, and sweepstakes, flooding my inbox with promotional emails and messages. Throughout all this, he continued to use my Facebook and Instagram accounts to post lies and further damage my reputation. I could tell because I was still monitoring the accounts using my mom's phone. While I can't say for sure if Alex was behind all the spam with my Gmail and phone number, it's safe to assume it was him, given his petty nature and vendetta against me. Plus, I just had a hunch that it was him. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I realized I had forgotten to do the one thing I should have done earlier: take out money from our joint account. You see, the money in our joint account mostly belonged to Alex. I'm pretty frivolous with money, always have been. Alex, on the other hand, is more cautious and earns the bulk of our income. But we had an understanding, an unspoken agreement that if we ever had a fight or separated, we would split the money in our joint account equally, no matter who deposited it. It was a promise we had made to each other. But of course, I should have known better. When I finally checked our joint account, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Alex had withdrawn every single penny, every last cent. He didn't leave me a dime. He emptied our accounts, leaving me with nothing. Mind you, during all this, I was still at my parents' house, and it had been over a week. I was just so confused and tired. I was thinking about changing my phone number and email because I didn't know what else to do. It felt like Alex had been planning all these for a while, and my mistake just made him explode. I had never seen this side of him before. He was completely ignoring me, not responding to any of my messages or calls. I had begged and cried in my voicemails, asking him to stop. He had ruined everything, my reputation, my job, and he just wouldn't quit. He was relentless. And then came the final blow. Alex finally reached out to me, stating that we were obviously getting a divorce and that he had given me enough time to sort things out. He asked me to come pack my things from the house. I was at a loss for words. This was the man I loved, yet he had made my life miserable for the past week. I decided that perhaps divorce was the best option, hoping that once it was all over, Alex would leave me alone. I resolved to beg him, if necessary, to please just leave me in peace and to forgive me. In the days that followed, I remained at my parents' house, feeling lost and exhausted. I contemplated changing my phone number and email, unsure of how to protect myself from Alex's relentless attacks. It seemed as though he had always harbored this level of anger, keeping it hidden until my mistake gave him a reason to unleash it all upon me. Mind you, I didn't even know what had become of Marco. I wasn't sure if HR had fired him or if they had just given him a break. None of my coworkers had reached out to me. It was as if I had never existed in their lives at all. You would think that they would have at least called me or something, but nope. They just went radio silent. Also, despite my attempts to reach out, Alex refused to communicate with me. He ignored my messages and pleas for him to stop. It was clear he was set on destroying me no matter what. Eventually, he reached out, informing me that we were getting a divorce and instructing me to come collect my things from our home. I prepared to go back to our house, deciding to bring my brother along for support. I told Alex I would make sure to call him before coming and that I would be bringing my brother. He was fine with that. When my brother and I went to pack my stuff, Alex was of course home, and he asked me to refrain from engaging with him, simply to pack my things and leave. It was heartbreaking, but I respected his request. As we packed, I realized that some of my expensive jewelry was missing. I confronted Alex only to be told that he had sold it. I was devastated. While he had bought most of the jewelry, I had some pieces that were mine. I was left teary-eyed and shocked with my brother fuming beside me. I was at a loss. It dawned on me that if Alex had sold the jewelry, he likely took the receipts as well. Without them, reclaiming my belongings seemed impossible. Reporting it to the police felt futile without proof. I resigned to packing the rest of my things and leaving. All I wanted was to put this nightmare behind me. I asked Alex to send me the finalized divorce papers, agreeing to sign and return them promptly. That's my story. Alex took the "when you go low, I go lower" approach, destroying my reputation, our marriage, and everything in between over a single mistake. I regret confessing to him. I should never have entertained Marco's advances or gone out that fateful night. Thank you for listening.